Why did the monkey cross the road? Hey, hi, I'm ZGALA, the Art Angel. This is my 8 Dragon Room, or my back porch edition, and I will tell you the punchline to that silly joke at the end of this video if you stick around. You're welcome to tell me off or give away the punchline, why don't you, in the comments. That's all right, if you must. Actually, I'd rather you didn't. I'd rather you say something else that's kind. Anyway, as I was saying, I'm ZGALA, the Art Angel, sometimes called Anti-Angel. Some midday sun coming in the back porch edition here, which is sort of an indoor-outdoor space, which I'm building myself. It's not quite done yet, under construction. And today I want to talk about neuroplasticity. Oh, look, I'm going to train myself by doing this thing that I meant to do at the start. Welcome. This is to be a short session of the Authentic Action podcast, as well as a conversation for my YouTube video. And as I was just explaining, today I want to talk about neuroplasticity and some of my favorite tools for molding the brain in positive ways. They say you can teach an old dog, or you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but in the last 10 or 20 years, there's been new scientific evidence that shows that actually you can, or at least as far as that metaphor is concerned with human beings. I don't know that we've tested it out on dogs, but the point being, it turns out that that our brains are, and in fact, other parts of our nervous system are more plastic. And I should explain, plastic means like able to change. It does mean malleable, flexible, able to change, broadly speaking, but it also can mean able to create new pathways, able to regrow around injury and scar tissue, some things that we used to think were not possible before. So, of course, the more we learn, the more we know we don't know. There's always more questions. So I find neuroscience, the science of the brain's chemistry, the brain's physiology, the brain's anatomy, how our social structures mimic or reiterate the two halves of the brain. Very fascinating arena to look into. I've been fascinated by it as long as I've been studying things, and even longer than that, I have been exploring different aspects of what we now would call the right or left brain, types of activities. And there's increasing amounts of beautiful literature, that's a tough word for me, out there. People have spoken eloquently. Gosh, I'm just digging myself into a dirt hole here. Point is, other people have spoken more eloquently about how perhaps our modern Western society is heavily influenced by that, what we would call the left side of the brain, or the more logical, linear, sometimes called the more masculine side of the brain, more language-oriented, more logic-oriented, more straight line-oriented. And there's this undercurrent, if you will, of the feminine, of the curved, of the arcs, of what we can call often by pointing to the left hand. It's interesting because they do crisscross, as some of you might know, internally in the anatomy in most people. Of course, there's always exceptions. I'm talking about the brain here. In any case, back to there's this wave, this pulse, this impulse of the feminine that is seeming to be coming back into society. Of course, always everything for better and for worse. I'm not trying to pass judgment on either side of the brain. What I really believe is that it works best, the brain works best when the two halves are working together. Just like in society, we work best when the two sides of any given perspective are working together instead of coming from these extremes. Whatever definition you put in that name you put on that stick, those two extreme polar opposites are often extreme, can be harmful, and I vote no, double boo on us having one extreme or the other, as opposed to the two sides appreciating what the other has to offer and aiming to come together closer to that middle ground where we can see one another, we can appreciate one another, and we can find solutions to our broader systemic social things that we're doing that work for everyone. Boy, whew, that was a tangent and a half. Let me cycle back to neuroplasticity. I vote yes. I'm excited about the new things that we are discovering about how you can learn new things. It may take a little longer to learn a new language when you're older than when you're younger, for example, but it can be done. And there's ample evidence that your belief about whether or not you can do it has a huge influence on how easy or difficult and successful or not successful your endeavors will be. So I think it's important to spread this message around, and I think it's important to try to internalize what that really means to you, that even though you might be set in your ways, you could still change if you want to. And here's my personal caveat, my personal take on the whole thing is, if you are complaining about something frequently, then change it. Or shut the hell up. I've done my fair share of complaining, and I'm pretty hard to shut up. You might know if you know me, so I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying that you don't deserve love and affection and appreciation regardless of how much of that you do, but I am saying that's my aim, and it's also, I guess I'm also saying it's my aim to encourage other people to aim for that, to change what we don't like about life, not haphazardly, not without thinking it through, not without reflection. And that's a big pinky finger asterisk tangent, as I like to call it. Something important to think about is change is always occurring, but sometimes when we think we know what kind of change we want to instigate, there might be unintended consequences, as they say. There might be things we didn't see. I got little stickers on my fingers because I picked a prickly pear fruit, and if any of you have ever picked one of those, you know it is very difficult to touch one, no matter how careful you are, without ending up with 5 or 10. It always seems like it's only 5 at the beginning, and then later it's like, oh, I guess that's closer to 10 little stickers. Can you tell I got a little head cold going on? Let me sniffle grossly and drink some coffee, see if that helps. I do like coffee. I was just listening to a little blurb of an audiobook. Gross, I know. Sorry about that. About plants by Michael Pollan. Is it Pollan? I think so. Anyway, such a treasure that guy is. I'm going to put that book on my list. I love audiobooks. I have hopefully what will be eventually an audiobook, definitely a published paperback book in the making. I've been making it for quite a while. It's called The Shift, currently, working title. I'm pretty excited about it, and that's really about tools that you can use to develop your own self-mastery and change your own personal story. So it's related to what I'm talking about here, neuroplasticity, because it's based on some of that newer science, which is that it is possible to make changes at any point in your life. You got to want to, and you got to believe you can. And that's not even entirely true, because change is going to occur no matter what. It's just, if you would like to play a more active role, have more agency and a more of a sense of self-fulfillment in the long run over your life, then taking the reins, so to speak, taking the steering wheel, being the captain of your own ship, to use a few little metaphors there, is the path to that, I believe. And the good news is that we are continuing to discover new frontiers, opening up new ways that we didn't even know that the brain is more plastic than we thought. I have some little notes over here, and one of them says, momentum matters. And I do want to mention that. Momentum and the direction, the velocity, which way you're going, how fast you're going there, and what kind of drive you have, how much of the time you're driving yourself and to what degree, in what direction, obviously has a lot to do with what kind of changes are going to occur. And again, I would pose, I think it's Jane Goodall who talked about quite a while back, famously, probably not the first or the last, to talk about how change is always occurring. It's the one constant is change. And the question is just, what kind of change are you going to be participating in? Is it going to be conscious, or is it going to be unconscious? Is it going to be habitual and spiraling down in a certain way? Or are you always going to be aiming for a positive direction, maybe even quantum leaping over into more positive directions at times in your life? That's what I'm all about. Hey, put your hands in the air if you agree with that. I want to talk briefly about some of the tools. As I mentioned, I'm writing a book about tools for practical healing, for taking more control of your emotional state, for becoming more aware of your emotional state, and for taking more control. And that is interrelated with this idea of neuroplasticity and self-mastery. And there are some proven things that make us more open to that kind of change, that help prime our brains to make those more positive changes, if you will. And one of those is humor, laughter. And none of this will be a big shock to you as I go through these, I think, because it's sort of both intuitively and anecdotally, we all either have experienced firsthand or know people or have heard of people who have experienced these changes, these up-levelings, if you will, these deliberate shifts in their neurology to up-level their ability through the first that I was just mentioning is laughter, humor. When there's laughter or humor involved, it really does open up the brain and allow us to take in new information. It's been It's been shown in interesting studies. I don't know the name of any of those studies right now. Now I think I should go look them up. If some kind person wants to put the names of any of those in the comments, that sure would be grand. That would be neat. That would be spiffy. I'll keep thinking of the right word. That wasn't it. The other is play. When we're playful, and of course it's related, but again, it has to do with how do we open the brain instead of there's this, well, probably familiar with that sense of the brain clamping down and just hanging on to that fixed mindset, saying, nope, I know it's true, and I'm not going to change my mind. I'm not going to take in any information, and in fact, I'm going to dig my heels in and push back against new information. So humor and play help create this expansive kind of quality where the brain is able to take in new information in a more rapid and lasting way. So as an educator myself, and to any other parents or educators or therapists out there, I urge you to keep that in mind. Humor and play are really key to being able to plant the seeds of new information and help propagate personal transformation for our youngsters and for our clients and for ourselves. I wrote down psychedelics, and I do think that's worth mentioning. There are many ways. Spinning comes to mind, being in the dark, silence. There are many ways of shifting the state of our consciousness, and there are plant medicines that do that, and especially with guidance and in the right dosage, and with guidance and intention, this can be a very interesting arena to discover new ways of changing your brain. Now, pinky finger asterisk, I want to reiterate that disclaimer. That should be with proper guidance. I am not a qualified guide in that regard, although I have acted as one on TV a time or two. Hey, that's an inside joke. So anyway, point being, there's some really interesting, fascinating, compelling, encouraging research going on in the arena of psychedelics. Psychedelics being a broad term for the many plant medicines which can help catalyze or enhance an altered state of consciousness. And again, I want to mention there are other ways of doing that, like spinning, like getting into the flow state, which is something I talk a lot about in my book, the shift, the flow state, that is. But even focusing on your breathing for 2 minutes, you might be amazed what that can do to shift your state of consciousness, your brain's state, and make you more open to new learning, and or help you remember the learning you've done before instead of being in this chaotic state where maybe you don't access what you already know. I also wrote down art, and that is a huge, broad category. I just finished an audiobook about called Your Brain on Art. Really great book. I highly recommend. It re-sparked a lot of inspiration that I personally have had to build safe spaces, multi-sensory spaces. You might get a little bit of a sense of that from this unfinished space here that's indoor, outdoor. I like to play with color, with lines, with engagement, with the environment itself, site-specific, multi-medium kind of stuff. And there's, again, increasing, growing amounts of research and evidence to back up the use of art in its many, many forms. There's dancing, there's business, there's painting, there's building, architecture, both with color and maybe alternative or strange mediums and lines like you see around me, and the more traditional, the more rooted in the site, and everything in between. And that kind of brings me to the wrap on this ramble, which is that our artistic expression as human beings is one pathway that we get to our own emotions, and that is a huge component of how healthy and happy we can be in our lives. And so a big part of why I'm writing this book, The Shift, about owning our emotions and owning our own lives more, and the tools that we can use and that we all have access to do that, is because we're such beautiful emotional creatures, and our stories, which are based on our feelings, which are based on our conscious awareness of the emotions that are always coursing through us, is such a huge part of the societies that we build, the legacies that we leave, the architecture, the relationships. It really reverberates through the individual and through the systemic. And so I want to leave you with that thought and really encourage you to explore what kinds of artistic expression can help you unlock more of your potential by tapping into your own neuroplasticity. I also want to encourage you to like and subscribe. Breathe and smile. That's always important. Thanks for staying curious and courageous. Thanks for stopping by today. Thanks for being you and letting me be me. The joke, why did the monkey cross the road? 'Cause it was stapled to the chicken. Ba-dum-tsh. That joke, thanks to my good friend Leo Torres, it actually piggybacks on his favorite joke of all time, which is, why did the monkey fall out of the tree? Because it was dead. There's a whole myriad of others, but they just get worse from there. So thanks for tuning in. Let me know if you have a terrible joke or a good dad joke or anything in between that you want to share in the comments. I welcome a good joke or a bad joke any old time. And I am trying to get better at luring you into my podcast segments and my YouTube segments with a little extra humor for reasons that I just explained. So thanks for humoring me. Till next time, I'll be seeing you on the flip side. Ciao for now. Peace.